So far, I haven't said much about the whole COVID thing, and in this video, I'd like to explore a possible connection between what the media is pushing for a gender-neutral future and people having to get the jab no matter what. The aggressive push for COVID vaccines, now for children, as expected, coincides with the incessant media propaganda for the coming gender-neutral society. I'm here to tell you nothing is a coincidence, and the vaccines have something to do with making kids gender neutral. Indeed, every corporation in the Western world has spent a whole Pride Month donning their corporate logos with rainbow flags. Postal services, consumer banks, even the most boring paperclip companies you know of are pushing out non-stop advertising for COVID jabs, mixed-race families, and non-binary kids. Non-binary boys and girls are called the avant-garde, meaning people high up in politics know it's being planned for. Gender-neutral society is coming, and gender-neutral language is supposed to prepare us for it. Mother's milk is to be called person's milk. Man hours are person hours, and feminist women are talking out of their vaginas. Sorry, I meant pie holes. This linguistic attack on the West, lodged from within, serves no other purpose than to change reality. Without a doubt, then, the vaccinations have something to do with the West's preoccupation with these gender programs for kids. If everything from cartoons to toys to schools to Hollywood movies now involves some sort of reference to the LGBT alphabet, then perhaps the vaccines for children are really hormone blockers that will prevent a child's normal physical development. Hear me out. The COVID vaccines are mostly poison, a thick gel-like substance they will inject, and will, at minimum, help kill off an unproductive senior demographic. So the rich can steal their savings and spend their unclaimed pensions. For healthy reproductive adults, the vaccines may or may not make you infertile, but certainly will weaken you. And the real killer, of course, is the COVID vaccine for children. Basically, I suspect the vaccines will arrest children's bodies in a childlike state. Girls, for example, may no longer develop breasts and will no longer have periods. Boys will no longer grow extra muscle, won't grow taller and bigger than girls, nor will they have the testosterone for it. It won't matter, since you're not going to be allowed to eat a high-protein diet anyway in the vegan Fruitopia. Imagine healthy males revolting against the elites trying to sterilize them. We can't have that. In the Netherlands, our public health minister has said he's going to send jab buses to every school in the nation. Kids under the age of 12 can then have their jabs without their parents' knowledge or approval. State-subsidized teachers will no doubt fire up the peer pressure to save themselves from this grave, non-existent threat. And once the vaccinated start dropping like flies when their immune systems overreact to the actual flu season, the media will blame it on jab-resistant variants, and on the unvaccinated, of course, for which there is only one solution: more jabs. Luckily for our powerful elite friends, most people seem to be happy to take the jabs so they can join the nouveau stupide. Each and every one of you taking the jab deserves a Darwin Award for participating in these Special Olympics. You fucking retards. And then, during the next 10 or 15 years or so, when the vaccines have killed off at least half the population and boys and girls have ended up looking physically alike, selective abortions can do away with boys altogether, since no one will notice the difference when they're gone, thus leaving nothing but a neutered, genetically female-only, physically gender-neutral race of mindless slaves. This is a suicide cult. What is happening to the West? How did Western elites become their own people's worst enemies? How come people can't see through the bullshit? Not the world wars, not communism, not Islam, not mass immigration could destroy peoples of European stock, but an inordinate amount of fear for what is the common flu might do it. Let's backtrack a little to figure this out. Mainstream media, organized religion, and public education are the tools powerful families wield to communicate with and train the people. The news, the churches, and the schools are by no means objective institutions and never have been. Your taxes may help pay a teacher's salary, but teachers obey the state, not you. Elite families can easily abuse a democratic system by controlling both the left wing and the right wing. Both wings then tend to agree on important matters that benefit the rich and powerful, but not the people. True opposition is ignored, hijacked, or killed. The Trump right, for example, is the controlled opposition to the Biden left. Both were friends with Jeffrey Epstein, and knowing this, all we need to do is figure out what is really going on in the world by paying attention. So let us pay attention to what Western journalists, teachers, and even priests nowadays are pushing out most aggressively. They are pushing the ideal of a gender-neutral society. They are pushing for mixed-race offspring, especially for European women, and they are now pushing COVID vaccines, in particular for children. Might it all have something to do with one another? Why did the so-called alt-right movement bring forth self-admitted pedophiles such as Milo? Why does Turning Point USA host transgenders, gay blacks, and porn stars? And why do people fear the unvaccinated more than they fear people with HIV and AIDS? The one thing both political wings keep agreeing on then is the complete and total deconstruction and the eventual erasure of the white European family. This is what ties everything together. There is no uncontrolled position. If you haven't figured out how to think for yourself by now, you're not going to. While China admits its vaccine isn't as effective as the ones used in OECD countries, these Western nations also have the highest vaccination rates. And though almost nobody in Central Africa has been vaccinated against COVID as of today, up to 80% of the people in European nations have had their 2 shots. Devastating side effects, including paralysis and death, are kept from the media because most jabatoirs forbid people to take pictures of victims rolling over the floor, frothing from their mouths like epileptics with polio. Even more testament to human stupidity are the hundreds of people present watching others die before their eyes, only to step forward next when it's their turn to take the jab. Who knew it was this easy to kill people? Well, our elites did. They always knew. Except for Australia, there is no meaningful resistance. Hardly 20% of Australians have taken the jab, so their globalist government is left with few options but severely restricting public life until everyone dies. Until everyone does. Nowhere in the world have lockdowns been so severe as in places such as Sydney and Melbourne, but not to curb the virus, mind you, but to get the people to take the jabs. If Australians keep resisting, I predict the Aussie military will begin forcefully injecting men, women, and children before Christmas this year. It's just a coincidence that Australian-born Brenton Tarrant shot up a mosque in Christchurch so that new gun laws could be passed in time to confiscate people's weapons. You've been disarmed so the military could come in and jab you. Well, never mind my suggestion. I know almost no one will believe me except for the people who pulled it off. Still, I'm not even close to what one might call a conspiracy theorist. They're doing it out in the open, so it's not actually a conspiracy if it's not even a secret, is it? The real problem is that most civilians refuse to use their brains to figure out that the ruling classes they have been following so obediently all their lives are severely mentally ill.
Psychopathic.
The people we call our elites aren't normal people. They are emotionally broken people, seething with hatred and revenge. They hate you, common man, for being the cause of all their misery. They compensate with power for what they lack in ability. They're insecure because in a global economy that has taken a downturn for the West, our elites must now face the possibility of their own extinction. So be quick and reduce the cost of managing our nation by culling the herd. That means you. So again, so far I haven't said much.